I have 5 minutes, and this was a very rich morning. As to its approaches, I mean, it was not limited to law. We could discern geopolitical consideration, IR political and IR international relations approaches and political science approaches. So it was rich in that sense. Now, as to the main question obviously was, can the EU made responsible for what is happening in Libya? And in my reading, and here you are to correct me, of course, the panel was divided on that question. Two of them, Alexandra Gatto and Sonia Bollert, were clearly against holding the EU responsible. One member of the panel, Maria Julia Giuffre, was clearly in favor of holding the EU responsible. And the three others who appeared in front of us this morning, Ramses Wessel, Caroline Moser, and Achilles Cordes, were indeterminate to some extent. They could imagine that the EU would be responsible, but they didn't clearly state that it was. Now, what were the questions discussed in details? First, obviously, there were the conceptual questions concerning responsibility. Within that, first, the knowledge, whether we need constructive knowledge, what would constitute a constructive knowledge. Second, attribution. Caroline Moser was, for example, stressing very much how difficult it would be to establish who actually is acting, to whom to attribute. But there was the broader question of attribution, whether the sins committed in Libya should be attributed to the EU or to the member states, specifically Italy. And there were voices which claimed that probably it would be Italy which could be held responsible. That, as a conceptual question, was related to the issue of the status of the articles on responsibility of international organizations, which was debated whether it is the guideline to guide us in terms of attributing or using knowledge as a basis of responsibility. Obviously, the underlying question was direct or indirect responsibility. So whether the deeds committed in Libya, presumably committed by Libya, can be attributed to the EU or to some of the member states. Now, beyond the conceptual questions, we were confronted with a number of procedural questions in establishing that presumed responsibility. First of all, it was said very clearly by Sonia Bollert that the Court of Justice of the European Union is not competent to adjudicate common foreign security issues, which is an obstacle in the road to establish responsibility. It is also reluctant to deal with such cases, as we saw, and the solution proposed was that probably individuals should turn to their national courts and make those national courts turn to the CJEU with preliminary questions. Procedural difficulty is also the fact that access to information is very limited. That was stressed, for example, by Caroline Moser, which was denied by some of the other panelists, but certainly in order to have standing and successfully pursue a case, whether in front of a national court or in front of the Court of Justice, you really need to possess hard and undeniable facts. Now, where are we then? Perhaps we can take the advice of Ramses Wessel that the EU might be a portal through which we get to the responsibility without the EU itself being a responsibility. Now, hearing your contributions and questions, I had the impression that you are reinforcing the side which holds the EU responsible, primarily indirectly responsible for whatever is happening in Libya. And as to the consensus, we are all in agreement, all the panelists and all of you, that what's happening is intolerable. We are all seeking a solution to get it to the end. We couldn't agree on how that should be done.